So good afternoon, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about how can you utilize knowledge graphs to discover clinical product. And with me on the stage, we have Abhishek Mishra, who's the Director of Research IT, and Somdev, who's a Senior Solutions Architect with Amazon Web Services. My name is Navneet. I'm a Principal Specialist with Data and Strategy at AWS. So our goal here is to cover some of the learning objectives, which is about knowledge graph and discovery and findability of data. And we're going to be talking about discovering clinical products using knowledge graph, how to apply a knowledge graph-based solution in a real-world setting or scenarios. And that's where we have our customer, our partner, Eli Lilly, here to talk about some of the experiences. And also, we're going to be talking about how you can utilize Amazon Web Services solutions and services like Amazon Neptune to build a knowledge graph. Amazon Neptune is a service that can be utilized to build knowledge graph, not only for finding the data product, but otherwise as well. And Som is going to be talking about that a little bit later. So agenda, AWS for life sciences. I want to quickly talk about how AWS and life sciences industry work together on building some of the solutions around the modern clinical trial and modeling and data strategy. We're going to talk about different types of data catalogs, which is how you can find data as an example. Then I'm going to pass it over to Eli Lilly, who's going to be talking about modern data strategy with knowledge graph. And then finally, we're going to be looking at some of the technology, how you can utilize services to build an ecosystem there. Okay, so really at a high level, whether it is a machine learning or a quantum computing based workloads to accelerate protein folding algorithm, or an HPC to expand access to data, or beast data strategy, life sciences industry is pushing the envelope at the intersection of science and technology. And at AWS, we work very closely with our partners, with our customers, and other SMEs to help build those solutions and be there for our customers so that these use cases can be realized. We work across the spectrum with internal SMEs, customer partners. We offer several custom built solutions, of course, Amazon services, and we also have a set of services in our Amazon Health AI set of portfolio. And the idea here is to how we can work together with our customer partners across the spectrum of a life sciences journey, all the way from research and discovery to compliance to commercializing, manufacturing, and whatnot. So think about all the accelerating, modernizing techniques for building modeling, for modeling, and as well as for conducting smarter clinical trial. So what is this about finding the data using knowledge graph? We've heard earlier in the day from our speakers on building ontologies using knowledge graph, managing that, of course, precision medicine, some great topics, and it was great for us to learn as we were sitting there in the audience. We kind of take a little bit different approach on knowledge graph, not approach I want to say, but a different use case with knowledge graph about something that is aligned with FAIR principle. You may have heard of FAIR principle. Can I see a show of hands who know about FAIR? Okay, pretty much everyone in the room, that's great. So FAIR is findability, accessibility, interoperability, and reusability, right? And you add an L to it, which is lineage. And so it is important for a life sciences organization, for that matter, anyone, to be able to find the data product in a meaningful way at a faster pace, because the faster you find a data product, the faster you can start building business insights and all that. So FAIR stands for, like I mentioned earlier, the findability, lineage, accessibility, interoperability, and reusability. Today, we'll be spending a lot more time on the findability aspect of it, and then how knowledge graph can help you build a solution so that your data scientists, your consumers of the world can find the data faster. So you may have heard of different ways and techniques for discovering data assets, clinical data products. And these techniques are somewhere all the way across the spectrum of using a technical catalog or a data catalog to a business catalog and of course, a knowledge graph. So data catalog, think of them like tables, columns, unstructured data, structured data, what have you. Can I find the data with certain, table names and column names? But the business catalog is definitely a way for you to enrich that experience by adding business taxonomies to the discovery, right? So for example, if I want to say, hey, I'm looking for all the patients suffering from a specific conditions like heart failure, where are those data products? So you can build your ontologies, you can build your business metadata as part of your discovery experience. But then today we're going to talk about knowledge graph because it is important to think about that in many, many scenarios for an effective searchability experience, it is important for you to find data products based on several relationships. So think about ontologies, ICD-10, SNOMEDs, and others. They have certain level of hierarchy. They have certain level of integration. If you want to say, I'm looking for a concept called heart failure or diabetes or kidney failure as an example, you want to make sure that you can navigate through different set of ontologies and different versions of it as well. And then combine that with age. So you can say, hey, I'm looking for all the patients suffering from patient product, that is clinical product, suffering from heart failure over the age of 45. You just said heart failure, but you want your system to discover product, internally map all the ontologies and the age groups and present you that. So that is where the knowledge graph comes in. And I would like to invite Abhishek here to kind of go a little bit deeper in some of those topics.
Thank you, Navneet. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Abhishek Mishra, and I'm the Director of R&D IT at Eli Lilly and Company. And with the next set of slides, I'm going to talk a little bit more about what the data journey has been for Lilly, especially the group that I partner with, its product development, the investments that we are making, and how we are lining up the capabilities like knowledge graph to complement the current investments that we have done. So at Lilly, we are around 140 years old company. We have developed around 100 medicines. So you can imagine the lot of historical data that we have, and my business partners are constantly churning out a lot of data to discover the novel therapies. Now, my responsibility as a solution delivery manager is to build the novel solutions or capabilities that help my business partners create that positive impact. So during the last few years, my business partners and I have been on the journey where we are trying to digitize all the data, aggregate it, and enable access to all of the R&D as well as the enterprise data. We have built a lot of process automation solutions, data management solutions, and then at the top of it, there are various data consumption methods that we have built. So we have invested in a good data foundation so far, and we have also concluded recent POCs for the knowledge graph. And based on the results that we have seen from the POCs, I think we are at a good juncture where we are ready to accelerate the investments or the ROI on the investments through the knowledge graph capabilities as well as the data fabric capabilities. The results that we have seen, we had certain use cases, we asked certain questions that we wanted the knowledge graph to come up the answer with. And the benefits that we are seeing is that it's helping our scientists make more accelerated and quality decisions. It's definitely enabling the collaboration between the scientists and enhancing the knowledge sharing. And it is also building the robust data science capabilities foundation. And what I'd like the most is, the most importantly, it's creating a positive experience for the scientists so that they can focus on the science rather than worrying about the data operations, and the data integrity aspect of it. I want to share a little bit more context around the data foundation. Just like any other enterprise organization, a big enterprise organization, Eli Lilly has a diverse R&D information landscape. We have information systems of engagement. Those are driving process value chains. We have resulting systems of record. And then we have lots of data consumption tools, data consumption solutions. And then our data is a good mix of both structured as well as the unstructured content. The unstructured content is interesting because we have a good mix of Word documents, PDF documents, spreadsheets, images, and then all of you may be aware that a lot of proprietary instrumentation outputs are also there. Now, this is the data that we are producing internally. We also partner with a lot of external contract research organizations or contract development organizations. And these organizations are also constantly producing a lot of analytical as well as the process data that we are bringing inside our ecosystem. So we have brought all of this data inside the data lake, and then we have enabled access to this data through Elasticsearch. So we have been able to realize the benefits of cloud computing and enterprise data lake, like cost benefits and scalability and so on and so forth. However, most of our data is still in unconnected format, right? It is lying in the similar schema or format as it was in the source systems. We are making efforts where we are interlinking all of this data so that our search can produce meaningful results. And then what we have done is that we have, in the progress that we have made, augmenting our search results, is that we have defined business groceries that help us surface the unstructured content. The access to the structured content, we are using both technical catalogs as well as the underlying schema to fetch the structured contents. But the use cases or the POCs that we have done for the knowledge graph, they required more of extraction, defining the right entities within our documents, right? Extracting those entities, and how do we combine those entities through the ontologies, right? So that's where we are bringing an ecosystem where we can populate, extract all these entities, and bring them into a knowledge graph-like capabilities. So post the success of the POCs, now we are at the juncture where we are ready to execute an MVP and looking forward to build a scalable solution. When I say scalable, it should be scalable in both dimensions. One is horizontally across the various groups within the company. Second is the vertical across the data sets. Now, knowledge graph, what we have learned is that just like any other technology, it does not scale on itself. You put in more infrastructure, it will scale. You need to have a playbook that you take group by group because they are going to have different ontologies and different way of looking at your data. So the scaling has to be consciously done working with the business partners. So our ecosystem that we are looking forward to bring in order to make this knowledge graph like of capability work is one, the base data that we have brought into our enterprise data lake, the ETL logics that are going to extract the entities of interest, and then hosting the ontology or the metadata, we need to have an ontology management system. And then once we together take this lens and start interlinking the entities of interest, that's where we can populate the knowledge graph. And the data out of the knowledge graph, we are looking forward to build APIs or visualizations to give the access to this data. So I'm very excited for Eli Lilly and Company for the next set of the MVP and the implementations that we are going to do. Thank you for listening. I will pass on to Somdev to talk about the AWS Neptune in details.
So yeah, thanks Abhishek. Hi everyone, my name is Somdev Bhattacharjee and I'm a solutions architect at AWS. So over the next few slides, I'm going to talk about how you can implement a knowledge graph to solve a findability problem using Amazon Neptune, which is our graph database offering. Before that, I'm going to take a few minutes to introduce Amazon Neptune itself and also talk about the use cases that knowledge graph can solve. So first of all, Amazon Neptune is a fast, reliable, and fully managed service that you can actually use to create and operate your applications that work on large connected data assets. It supports both your open source W3 CRDF as well as the property graph model and its corresponding languages. So it supports Apache Tinkerprop, Gremlin, Sparkle, as well as OpenCipher. So Amazon Neptune is built with an optimized engine that can store millions of relationships. And then, when you query that, it would provide a millisecond latency on retrieving those results. And finally, it's highly reliable. So it's has an availability of 99.9%. And we actually copy your data across 6 times across 3 different availability zones. And a typical instance failover would take less than 30 seconds. So what are the use cases for knowledge graph? So you can use a knowledge graph to analyze both structured as well as unstructured data. So as Abhishek was alluding to, they have a lot of PDFs and text documents. So the first thing that you would do is you extract those entities that you need to actually build a knowledge graph. And you can use something like, Comprehend Medical, which is again an Amazon managed service, to extract those entities from your PDF documents. You can also improve the process efficiency and analyze dependencies better with a knowledge graph. For example, in life sciences, you can actually track your experiments, your trials, and also your drug characteristics using a knowledge graph. Finally, you can build context-aware systems that can go and retrieve an answer based on your queries and the vast knowledge base that you create with a knowledge graph. Also, there is usually a lot of valuable information that is actually hidden in large connected data sets, right? And it's very difficult to extract that information using a standard query language and based on human intuition. So if we integrate machine learning services with these large connected data sets, you can get a much better insight and knowledge discovery. So Neptune actually provides a Neptune ML feature, which you can actually use to build your language models and on your your knowledge graph in matter of hours rather than weeks. So let's dive into the use case that I'm going to explain over here. So think of when you're trying to build a cohort, right? And you want to run a query and identify your patients with certain criteria. So discovering that patient data that matches your interest is very time consuming and hard, especially if you are looking at multiple data sets with different kind of disease ontologies, concepts, and different kind of disease ontologies. What you have to do is basically you have to go and look up the codes for your disease ontologies, which could be SNOMED City and ICD-10, and then individually search across multiple data sets to find and match the criteria that you're looking for. So without a knowledge graph, think of as a data analyst, you start actually gaining access to some of these data sets, some basic access, then you are going to run those queries. And you have to repeat this whole process for all the data assets that you have to be able to come to a result set that you can eventually use for your cohort building. Now, with knowledge graph, you can alleviate all these repetitive searches by building a knowledge graph. So you can extract the entities that you want and build a knowledge graph, and then have your data analysts search those based on a semantic search, and then it will provide a list of data products to which they can gain access, and then finally get that patient level information to build your cohort. So so before you start, how do you build that knowledge graph? So knowledge graph, as you probably know, it's all about vertices and edges, right? So your vertices are the entities, basically typically the nouns, right? The disease concepts, the patient and the patient demographic information. And then you have your relationships, which are your edges, right? So how these different entities are actually linked. So once you identify your vertices, your entities, and the edges, then you can start building your knowledge graph. So as you can see, we start with a disease concept, right? So maybe a congestive heart failure. And then you can link it to a mesh disease hierarchy. So basically, which is a kind of a structured way of categorizing your diseases. And then you connect them to the different ontologies, both SNOMED City as well as ICD-10. And then you finally connect to them to the patient information and all the demographics information that is associated with that. So this is how you would build that knowledge graph that becomes a findable solution for your data analyst. Now I'm going to look at an architecture on how do you integrate your knowledge graph that you have built into a findable solution using your search portal, right? So there are 2 components to this architecture. So I'm going to start with the right-hand side. So first of all, how to build that knowledge graph. So all these green boxes, so these are your inputs to your knowledge graph. So you have your 3 clinical data products over here. think of these as data that is coming from the EHR systems, right? Which contains your patient information, their demographics, the procedures, any kind of medications and things like that. And this could be stored as standard CSV files in your object store. And also the medical ontologies, which contains your SNOMED, CT, and ICD-10 codes. So using those, you're going to build your knowledge graph, maybe something in Amazon Neptune, right? So once you have that ready, let's move on to the left-hand side. This is the user experience I'm going to talk about. So as a data analyst, you go to a portal or a UI where you can go and put in your query, right? And it could be a semantic query, like Navneet was mentioning. Like I can go and put in a search saying that I want to find all female patients that suffered from congestive heart failure between the age of 40 and 50. Now, the front-end portal is just going to take that query and pass it to a query translator. It's just a Lambda function or a simple code that would take that semantic search and convert it into either a Sparkle or a Gremlin query, which would then be used to actually query your knowledge graph. And what you're going to get is a list of data products that basically matches that query that you have put in, and which would be provided back to the user. So once you have your list of data products that meet your search criteria, then you can use and request permission to them, right? So using your permissions management, your approval workflow, however you want to do it, you provide access to those data products to your data analyst or the business analyst. And once they have access to that, they can use any kind of standard SQL client to actually query that data to get that patient level information that they can use to actually build the cohort. So what we have covered basically over here is, again, we talked about how you can discover clinical data products using a knowledge graph. Abhishek talked about how they are using knowledge graph in a real world setting. And then I mentioned about how you can build Neptune to build that end-to-end knowledge graph. So with that, thank you again. And if there are any questions, we are here, we can take them.
Well, you have a question?
Sorry. I'll ask one question. So in terms of maybe this is more for Amazon. Any plans on the roadmap to include more like visualization type tools on top of these knowledge graph capabilities? All-purpose general kind of visualization tools to kind of visualize some of the information. Anything you could speak to that about?
So we do provide some notebooks that you can use to generate visualizations, like using if you're running a query against Amazon Neptune. But right now we also have QuickSight, so there are plans of integrating with some of that so you can actually visualize what you have in your knowledge graph. But I'm not sure about the roadmap item exactly where it stands on actually doing that integration.
I wanted to make sure I understood the sort of knowledge graph that you described there. The primary question or type of question that people are answering in that graph is, what data product should I be looking for? Is that correct? As opposed to answering the actual scientific question in the graph.
That is correct. Actually, so what we have found is organizations, they have this huge amount of data, and all these are different data silos, right? And it's very difficult to eventually, first of all, find the data products that can answer my question before I can go and delve into the patient level information where I can get more granular information, right? So, and there could be restrictions on PII data or PHI data that's within those data assets, right? So there is a set of approval needed to even get to that point. So you can basically extract some kind of profile information of them and then create a knowledge graph that will provide, some high level answers. Then you actually get access to those data assets, where you can run those scientific questions.
And do you have a vision of going to the next step then of actually answering scientific questions in the graph later, or is that a completely separate idea?
Yeah, so that's the consumption of data. We do have not knowledge graph specific, but we do have tools like NLQ engines in our QuickSight called QuickSight Q, which you can leverage to answer some of those questions using plain text. So I think like Som was saying is, as part of the FAIR principle, it is getting extremely complicated to find the right data product. And we believe the knowledge graph is the right solution along with business catalog. Once you get the access, then you run your queries. And your queries can run from Q, as an example, NLQ. You can also run your queries in knowledge graph, although I'd suggest that you have to really be careful around the granularities you put in knowledge graph because of the performance and everything that comes with it. Running a query against a pre-built model or a relational or a warehouse sometimes are more performant. So,
Okay, thanks. It's an interesting idea.
great question.
Anyone else?
You talked about the business catalog. Can you all share what product you're using? And also, building a business catalog itself is an effort by itself, right? So if you can talk about, are you doing it in parallel, or you had the business catalog in place to do the knowledge graphs?
Yeah, so we used a combination of two things. One is we looked at the outside ontologies, what we have in the marketplace. And then we also partnered with one of the universities looking at a particular domain area. And then it came up with those set of ontologies. And then what we found was we gave both the ontologies to the implementation team. But we found that what internally curated ontology was producing more results rather than a very comprehensive outside ontology. Does that answer your question?
Question about Amazon Comprehend. You mentioned that earlier, the Comprehend Health. So can you talk us through a little bit more about what that enables, what capabilities that brings? I understood it was a entity recognition engine, and what type of out-of-the-box vocabularies does it already have?
Yes. So it's an NLP solution basically, and we have two products. One is a Comprehend and a Comprehend Medical. So medical is more focused on actually extracting medical entities, right? So if you can provide a text, it can do that entity detection, and also some labeling and stuff like that it can help. And we see a lot of use cases with Comprehend Medical, basically with transcription notes and things like that, where people want to basically extract those entities. And so there are a lot of use cases we have seen, and also our blog is there, how you can use actually extracting entities from these documents and then building a knowledge graph using Amazon Neptune.
With Comprehend Medical, you can extract PII, PHIs, SNOMED,
Yeah, it has
norms as well. And with Comprehend, you can also have a business, like a custom vocabulary.
Are there any other questions? Okay, well, let's thank AWS.